Okay, hello. Um, okay, you should see the desktop now. Should be able to hear me. Everything's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, I got a couple windows open. Okay, people are coming in. All right. Okay, the main thing to point out today is the second midterm exam is this Thursday. So the review problems are up here. And I thought we would start today by seeing if anybody has any questions about review problems. We could look at review problems, go over some of the problems together. So anybody have any questions about these problems right now? Anybody, any problems anybody wanted to ask about? Any questions about, is there any problems in here that anybody had a question about? Remember, you should, the exam will be like the first one. You should, uh, it'll be similar to these kind of problems. So solving these problems would be a good way to be ready for the exam. So the exam will be more or less like a subset of problems like these. There won't be anything on the exam that's wildly different than any of these. But all the problems in the exam will be similar to one of the, every problem on the exam will be similar to one of these kind of problems. Any question? Anybody had any question about one of these, or anything? Yes.
Can you do question 2?
Number 2, this one. Okay. Yeah, okay. Now let's use the Java visualizer to work on the problem. Okay. So problem 2 says start with these 2 strings. So let me just copy and paste those into the Java visualizer. Okay, so I've got those 2 strings. Okay, now I want a single for loop that uses substrings of these guys to create this output here. So actually, let me take this output and put it over here so we can see it while we're working on it. So we want to generate that output. Okay, so there's the output we want, and we want to write some kind of for loop. So the problem is to write a for loop. So I'll just write for int I equal something, I less than or equal to something else, I plus plus. So here, yeah, so this is one way to do a problem like this, is to start thinking in terms of sketching out what you need. Okay, so we're gonna have a for loop. Now that for loop is supposed to print out these lines. So what would be a good thing for here and here? If I want to print out, this many lines, what would be a good thing for here and here?
One and 12.
Because there are, see, that would count 12 lines. If you have 1 and 12 there, you'd be counting 12 lines. And let's see, what do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 lines. Okay. Okay. All right. So we got 12 lines, and each line has 2 parts to it. If you pick a line, you pick one of the lines, you notice it's got 2 parts to it, a part that's got spaces in front and stars afterwards. So we need to print this part of the line, and we're supposed to use S2 to do that. Then we're supposed to print out this other part of the line and use S1 to do that. So we think about what we're going to do is we're going to print out, we're going to print the first part of the line, somehow using S2, and then we're going to print the second part of the line using S1. And then if you've got to the end of a line, you want to go and end the line. So then I would want something like this, LN. Okay, so print the first part of the line using S2, print the second part of a line using S1, and then end the line with a L empty, just go back to the beginning of the next line. Okay. Now, what I need to do is I need to figure out what I want a substring of this guy. I want a substring of this guy that has the appropriate length. See, for each line, it gets a little bit longer. But I need a substring that gets a little bit longer, a little bit longer. I need a substring of this thing. So substring. And I need to put something in there to say what substring I want. And then for the second part of the line, again, I want a substring of this that's going to print out the second part of each line. So I need a substring of this guy. And I don't know what to put in there yet. I have to figure out what will go in there. Let's do, so this is going to be the spaces, and this is going to give us the stars. Okay, so we do spaces and stars. Okay, all right. Now here's a trick. Take this thing and make it into a little table of information. Okay, so for example, here's my I variable. I have, this is going to be when I is 1. This is I is 2. See, the I variable counts my rows. So there's row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, 5. It's a little bit tedious to write it out, but it's real helpful to draw out a table. When you do these kinds of problems, it almost always helps to make some kind of table like I'm about to do here. Okay, so that's 10. And then I is 11 for that row, and I is 12 for that row. Now, in each row, I'm going to have a certain number of spaces and a certain number of stars. Okay? In this row, how many spaces are there?
0.
0. But in this row, how many spaces are there?
1.
1. And here there's 2, and here there's 3, and here there's 4. Notice that the spaces, what's the connection between the spaces and the row number?
I minus 1.
I minus 1. Now, see, you can see now that the number of spaces is 1 less than the row number. Okay, so over here, I know what to put here. Well, over here, I'm going to do I minus 1 spaces. So I put a little comment there. I want I minus 1 spaces. See, this table has helped me see that now. There's 5 spaces, and I'll go ahead and finish it. Just 6 spaces, 7 spaces. But it always is going to be the case. Usually once you've done a few rows in these tables, you don't always have to finish the table. The idea is to figure out figure out what's the relationship between spaces and what row number you're in. And you draw a little bit of the table, and usually you can see after a couple rows what the relationship is. Okay, now what about stars? Okay, how many stars are in this row? Well, just count them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 stars in that row. And then every row has 1 less. So that's 12, 11, 10, 9. Okay, now here's a harder question. What's the relationship between the number of stars and I? You need a little formula that will say how many stars are there in terms of what row number I am? What would be a formula to tell me if I know what I is, a formula to tell me how many stars there are.
Would it be 13 minus I?
Okay, let's try that. Let's, 13 minus I. Okay, when I is 1, 13 minus 1 is 12. When I is 2, 13 minus 2 is 11. When I is 3, 13 minus 3 is 10. So, it's working out. So, for example, when I is 6, 13 minus 6, well, 13 minus 6 is, 7, which is the next number. 13 minus 6 is 7. That's the next number here. Now, let's go all the way down to the end. This should be 6. This should be 5. This should be 4. This should be 3. This should be 2. Oh, in the last row, it's worth checking the last row. There should be 1 star. But do we get that? 13 minus 12. 12 is the last row. 13 minus 12 is 1. Okay, so we get 1 star there. Okay, so now we know how many stars there are. Okay, now what do I do here to get I minus 1 spaces? I've got all the spaces I need here. I want the first I minus 1 of them. What do I put inside a substring to get I minus 1 spaces? How does a substring function work? How does the substring function work? What do I give substring? If you give it one number like this, what does it do?
It returns that letter corresponding to that number.
No. It doesn't give you the letter corresponding to that. That would be char at. Char at 8 would give you the letter corresponding to that number. How does substring work? If you give it one number, what does it do?
It prints
Say again. Couple of people gave answers. They were garbled up. When you give substring one number, what does it do with that number? How do you find out the answer to that question?
Does
Remember,
it find it
pardon
and
me?
then go to the end?
Pardon me?
Find it, go the way to the end of like.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, what does substring do with a single number?
It prints the character.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't print. This thing prints. Substring doesn't print. So, but what does it? So it builds a string. It doesn't do anything with a string. It builds a string. We will print it, but substring doesn't print it. But what string does it build for us? We give substring the number 8, and what string does it build for us?
From 8 to the end.
Yeah, from 8. It starts at the letter that's got the position 8 and goes all the way to the end. So this is the starting point and goes to the end. Okay? What if you give it 2 numbers? What does substring do with 2 numbers?
It goes from 3 to 6.
3 to 6, yeah. So it goes from the first number up to not including the last number. So it goes from, this would go from 3 to 6. In general, it goes from the first number up to, but not including the last number. Okay, so how can I get Okay, and remember the very first number is always starting at 0. So you start counting from 0. So how many letters does that print?
6.
0, 1,
7,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It prints how many letters?
7,
7 letters numbered 0 through 6. See, 7 letters numbered 0 through 6. So how do I get I minus 1 letters?
zero to I minus 1.
Yeah, it'd be 0 to, so now remember, this is 7 letters numbered 0 through 6. Since we're counting starting at 0, 0 through 6 is 7 letters. So since this is 7 letters and we want I minus 1 letters, let's put I minus 1 there. Okay, so there's I minus 1 spaces. Okay, how do I get 13 minus I stars? How will I get 13 minus I? How do I get that number of stars?
Zero to I? Oh no.
Okay. Remember we said, okay, take it away. How many letters does that print?
6.
We'll count them. It goes starting at 0 up to and not including 5. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was 5 letters, 0 through 4. Okay, so notice that 0 through whatever number, how many letters does that print?
N,
N letters. How many letters does that print?
K,
K letters. How do I get 13 minus I letters?
13 minus I.
Yeah, 13 minus I. Because I'm starting at 0. So I get 0 to 13 minus I is 13 minus I letters. Okay, so we think in terms of a concrete example first. So we think of the concrete first. So substring, substring. Oh, here's like, here's a little puzzle. How many letters does that print?
4,
Well, count them. So you'd start where?
7,
7, 8, 9, 10. You don't count 11. 7, 8, 9, 10. 4 letters. Okay. Now, does anybody see a pattern? How many stars, how many letters does
B minus A.
B minus A? B is a number, A is a number. The number of letters you print is B minus A. That is B minus A number of letters. And that's what we have here. 11 minus I minus 1 minus 0 is I minus 1. 13 minus I minus 0 is 13 minus I. Notice here 11 minus 7 is 4. And so here in general, B minus A is B minus A number of letters. Programmers do algebra. We do algebra. We have to work with numbers. We have to work with symbols. You know, we do this stuff all the time. You got to be willing and ready to think in terms of formulas and simple algebra like this. Yeah, so the substring from A to B starts at A, goes up to B, but doesn't include B. And then if with a little bit of thought, it's not so obvious, you realize that that's B minus A letters. Okay, all right. So now we should be done. We should have what we want now. Okay, see, now what do? We made this table down here. We said that there's a variable I that counts our rows. I goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then we make a table what information we need to know for each row. How many spaces are in a row and how many stars are in a row. Make the table, write out from the picture on the left what's there. 0 spaces, 1 space, 2 space, blah, blah, blah. 12 stars, 11 stars, 10 stars, 9 stars, blah, blah, blah. Then we need to print out some substring of S2 for the spaces and a substring of S1. We figure out the formula that gives us the spaces from I. How do you get this number from that number? How do you get this number from that number? We have that here. That's our comment. Our comment helps us sort this out. We want I minus 1 spaces and 13 minus I stars. Okay, now we can visualize that to check. Go to the end, and there's the output we wanted. Doesn't even fit on this little box. You have to scroll. Okay, there's the output we wanted. Okay, now this is a real common strategy for these problems. You don't just write code. Nobody really just sits there and writes code. You have to build the code step by step, like if you were playing with Lego bricks or something like that. You build it from, you build it up. This table helped me build it up. I think in terms of, well, I need a for loop. I have to figure out what goes there. If I'm going to do a for loop, I need to know what goes there and what goes there. Then I knew I needed to print out the first part of a line. I needed to print out the second part of a line, and I needed to terminate the line. So I need a print line. Then I need some substrings, a substring that gives me the spaces, which would be using S2 for the spaces, and a substring that gives me the stars, that'd be using S1. Then the hardest part was, okay, what do I do here to get the right number of spaces? What do I do here to get the right number of stars? It is not about, it's not like I start at the beginning and I type out my code till I'm done. Nobody can do that. It's write a little bit, think about it, try to find a visual aid. In this case, these tables like this are a strategy for figuring out how to fill in the blanks up here. Okay, so you solve these problems in a lot of steps, of write a little bit, think about it, and at any given time you can try to visualize it. If it'll compile, you can go ahead and run it and see how it's looking, see how it's doing. Like here, we didn't run it till the end, but normally you would try to compile and run as you're building it up, so you could see that if you're on the right track or not. So for example, if you forget that line there, which is a real easy thing to do, you get all the stuff about how many stars there are here, how many spaces and stars there are here, but then you would visualize this. And if you go to the end, you see, oh, now you see, you forgot to start new lines. See how that's all on one long line. That's a real obvious clue that you forgot to print lines somewhere. So you forgot to say, when I get to the end of a line, I have to do something to go back to the beginning of the next line. So that would be up here. The fix would be put that back. Yeah. So, but it's real easy to forget that one's there. Oh, here's another way you could do the same thing. You don't have to have that one. I could just put an ln right there. The second part could have the ln built into it. See, the second part could have the ln built into it. That would also work. Give me a right answer. See, got the same right answer. So either one is a fine way to do it. Okay, you can think in terms of, like I was thinking in terms of, okay, first I have to build up the first part of the line, then I build up the second part of the line, and then after the second part of the line I'm done, So then I can terminate the line. So I was thinking of, okay, a line has got 3 parts. First part, second part, and the third part is to go from the end back to the next beginning. But you could take that little guy there, the ln, that ln could just be merged into this one here. Now, what if you put 2 ln's there? What if you put an ln there and an ln there? What kind of a goofed up output am I going to get?
You'd have a new separate line after the spaces, and then you'd have the asterisks and then
Yeah,
the spaces.
Yeah, and the asterisks and spaces will all be on separate lines, and the asterisks wouldn't be indented because they'd always start at the beginning of a line. So there'd be blank lines between the asterisks. Like, okay, look what it'll look like. See, there's a blank line between the asterisks, and the asterisks are starting at the left edge. There's no indentation because the thing that was supposed to indent them is off by itself on one of these lines here. So that would not be so obvious, but that would mean that you did an extra. It's from this extra ln. This ln didn't belong there. There was no after you print the spaces, you're not supposed to go start another line. So in this output, there's spaces there, then that output. Then there's spaces there, then that output. And if you see, the spaces are getting longer and longer and longer and longer. See how the spaces are getting longer? Which is the right thing, but they're in the wrong place. These 3 stars are supposed to be at the end of that space. Okay, so notice that you look at your output and you look at it and you say, oh, I made a mistake. That I didn't want that ln there. I didn't want that ln. I wanted only this ln. That's the one. That one should be there. The other one shouldn't be there. Okay. So running your code and seeing the output is a big part of writing these, because you're going to make mistakes, and sometimes you can see your mistake. Sometimes you don't see the mistake. Sometimes the output's so garbled you don't see what the mistake is. Sometimes the output tells you what the mistake is. Okay, so it's not a sit down, start here, write P, and then start all the way down till you write that closing brace. Nobody can do that. Nobody can just write from here to here, from left to right, top to bottom. It's think about pieces. What piece do I need? I need a piece like, I need to find those strings there. I need a for loop. The for loop does 1 line at a time. So the body of the for loop is doing 1 line. Each line has got 2 pieces to it. And I have to terminate the line. Okay. So what about another problem from here? What would be another good problem to do? Oh, let me go back one thing. I was asking people, how do you know how substring works? Okay, now if you go back here, a couple weeks ago, I had a zip file of called tables. Now I have to find it. Yeah, there it is. There's a zip file of tables that summarizes. You can find this stuff in the textbook, but it's sometimes kind of hard to find these things in the textbook. So I gave you like a bunch of little tables. And you had a couple of these tables were part of a homework assignment. It's opening on a separate monitor. Okay, I have to find that zip file on my other monitor. Okay, there it is. All right. What we were looking for is some useful methods from the string class. Okay, and we're interested in how does substring work. And there's 2 versions of substring, one that takes 1 number and one that takes a start and an end number. And here they explain to you how they work. So you remind yourself by looking. This is what programmers do. Eventually you learn how to find these tables on the internet. So you can find them on the internet if you know what to Google for. But I gave you a little folder of a bunch of tables that I thought were real useful. Tables of all the words that are built, the built-in words to Java. Let's see, the operators, and which ones got done first. Like these operators are done before any other operators. These are the last operators. If you write a formula, the operators in the formula are done from top to bottom in that order. These first, then these, then these. So there's a list of all the operators and what order they're done in, their order of operations. So, I put different, I put little tables in here, and especially the string. There's actually two tables of string methods. This one and this one. They're slightly not over, they're slightly different tables. So there's some things in this table that aren't in this one, and some things in this table that are in that one. So I put two tables in there on strings. Whoops. Okay. And again, there's substring. Notice this one only shows the one version of substring. Substring that starts and stops. They didn't even point out in this table that there's a second version of substring, the version of substring that has just the start number in it. Okay. So you may want to download that little list of tables and start getting used to using them. They're pretty convenient because most people don't memorize this stuff. Most people will look it up. After a while, some of the real simple things like how substring works, you do eventually get to remember them. But it's very much a habit to get into, that you remember where to look these things up. So this little table, these tables here will be where you could, you'd want that at your fingertips, so that when you want to use a substring, like a problem says, use substrings, you need to go over here and look up substring. How does substring work? Okay, so keep these kinds of things in mind. Programmers all look up things. They'll eventually memorize the things they use every day, but there's plenty you don't use every day as a programmer that you look up over and over again. Okay, now what about another problem from here? Any other problem from this list here?
Three C.
3C? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's kind of similar to what we just did, but it uses one string. Okay, so let me open up another Java visualizer. We do this in another. Okay, so now we're using this string here. So copy and paste that into the visualizer. Oh, I didn't copy it. So copy and paste that into the visual. Okay, there's that string. Okay, now, okay, use the following string, write a single while loop. It doesn't really matter if it's a while loop or a for loop, but it says right here, it says write a while loop. Okay, using that string. Okay, so I'm going to write a single while loop. So a while loop looks like this: while something, do something. Okay, so that's my basic idea. I need to do while something, do something. Okay, now what the while loop's going to do is the while loop's going to do line, 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 line. Okay, how many lines? Okay, now let me do like I did before. Let me copy this picture over, so I have to keep switching back and forth. So it'd be good to have that picture over here. Okay, so there. Okay, now I'm going to make this, okay, I'm going to make a little table. I'm going to say I have a line number, and this will be line 1, and this will be line 2, this will be line 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I got 6 lines. Now that line number could be an I, for example. So I'll go ahead and make it a letter I. So that means I'm going to need an int I, and I'll go ahead and start it at 1. Then what would how many times do I want to loop now? While what now? My I is going to count these lines. So I've set it up to be a counter of lines. What do I want to count up to?
6.
6. So while I is less than or equal to 6. Okay, so that'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I got to be careful. Now that means inside here at the very end, the last thing I need to do is say I plus plus. Okay, so after I do something on whatever here, or after I do something, before I start the next loop, I have to increment I. So that would say go to the next, line number. Go to the next line number. That's why that's why for loops were making, notice that this part, this part, this part, and this part would be all part of the same line in a for loop, which is one of the things that makes for loops easier to think about. So as a while loop, this is the thing that initializes my variable. Here's where I check my variable. Here's where I increment my variable. As a while loop, I have to put those in 3 different places. Okay. All right. Now, let's think about a line. What is a line? A line will have a star, and then it'll have some number of spaces. Okay. Now, how many spaces are in this line? Well, I can count those. Okay. So I'll count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to have a star, 9 spaces, and then another star. And so here I'm going to have something that counts spaces. Okay, so the idea is that a line 1 is a star, 9 spaces, and another star. Now, what's the next line? The next line is a star, and then count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, okay, that's interesting. That's only got 7 spaces. Notice that the spaces went down by 2. And then there's going to be a star. Okay, then this line is a star, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now this table really, this table is worth doing in detail because this table is going to be a little bit trickier than the one we did before. Okay, now let's keep on going. For this line 4, I'm going to start with a star. Then I'll have 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then a star. Then this one will be a star. And you can see there's going to be just 1 space there. 1 space there, and then a star. And then line 6 is weird. What's weird about line 6? It's actually different. Why?
Just 1 star and not
Yeah.
some spaces.
Yeah, there's just 1 star, and it's not even really, you could say it's 0 spaces, but then you have to be careful because there's no star after the 0 spaces. So I'm just going to leave it like this. Line 6 is special. It's 1 star. Okay. Now, actually, I'm missing something in my table. My table's incomplete. Does anybody see what there's something I forgot to put something in my table.
The spaces before the first star.
Pardon me?
The spaces before the first
Yeah,
star.
I need to make my table bigger. There's spaces before the first star. So I'm going to make room for another column here. So see, this is kind of the iterative process of thinking. You have to start. You've got to start somewhere, and you start working on this. And then I did a bunch, and then I realized, oh, I goofed up. Okay. Now what do I have? before that's, okay, there's another spaces here. Okay. So spaces, star, spaces. Make my table line up a little bit. Okay. So a row was some number of spaces, a star, some number of spaces, and then another star. Okay. Now I've counted out the middle part of them. Okay. Let's do over here. In row 1, how many spaces are there at the beginning?
0,
0 spaces. In row 2, how many spaces are there at the beginning?
1.
1. Now what's true about this column? Next one, there'll be what?
2,
2 spaces. Next one, there'll be
3.
3. Now, yeah, now look, this column is going up by 1s, while the other column was doing what?
Down by 2s.
Down by 2s. Yeah, see, tricky. Yeah, the table helps us see that we're doing a couple different things. We're going up by 1s on the left with the number of spaces, while the spaces here are going down by 2s every time. Okay, so we have to account for this stuff. Okay. Oh, and then here, the last row is 5 spaces and a star, and then the stuff doesn't exist. So the last row is kind of different. Okay. Now, that means up here, I may want to not go up to 6. I may want to go up to 5 because 6 is going to be special. So I'm going to go ahead and just make this, I'm going to treat these 5 rows as my loop because they're all the same. And I'll treat this row as separate because it doesn't meet the pattern of the loop. In fact, I'll just go ahead and say, what's that row do? System.out.println. I'll just type it in. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces and a star, close quote. Okay. It's since it's just one line, I don't need a for loop or anything for that. So this one line being different, I'll go ahead and just print it out by itself. Okay, there's line 6. 5 stars and I'm sorry, line 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces and a star. So then my loop's going to do rows 1 through 5. Okay. All right. Now, here's where I do a row. Now let's do it like we did before. A row has got 4 parts to it. So the row is going to have system.out.print 4 times. There's going to be the first part of the row. Okay. There'll be There'll be the first thing on the row. There'll be the second thing on the row. There'll be the third thing on the row. And there'll be the fourth thing on the row. And then the row needs to be terminated. So I'll make that a print line. Okay. What's the first thing? Okay. Which one of these is easy?
the stars,
The stars. Okay. Where do they go?
between the spaces,
Yes. So here's the first part of the line. Here's this is the first part of the line. This is the second part of the line, third part of the line, fourth part of the line. Where do the stars go?
the second and fourth part.
Yeah, see, they're the first part, second part, third part, fourth part. So the second part of the line is just star. And the fourth part of the line is star. And then you terminate the line. Okay. Tricky parts here and here, the spaces. Okay. Okay. So now let's make a comment. This is some number of spaces. And this is also some number of spaces. But we'd like to know what that number is in terms of the row number. Okay, can you give me this number here in terms of the row number? In row 1, 0 spaces. In row 2, 1 space. In terms of the row number, how many spaces are there?
I minus 1.
I minus 1. See, row 1, 0. Row 2, 1 minus that. Row 3, 1 minus 3. Row 4, 1 minus 4. Row 5, 1 subtracted from 5. Row 6, 1 subtracted from 5. Okay. All right. So now, but now I know I'm supposed to do that by a substring of S of S. S dot substring. How do I get I minus 1 spaces out of that substring?
0 to I minus 1.
0 to I minus 1, just like it was before. Okay, there. 0 to I minus 1, just like we did in the last problem. Okay, now a little bit trickier one, this guy. How do I get this number from that number? And it's going to be a little harder because these are going down by 2s. So 9 for row 1, 7 for row 2, 5 for row 3. Can you find a little formula that would give me the number of spaces from that row number? Think trial and error. Think, you want to go down by, you want to start essentially at 9 and then go down by 2s. Or maybe you want to start at 11 and go down by 2s.
Can we do 11 minus 2 times 5?
Yeah, so if I start with 11, then I subtract 2 for every line number I'm in. See, for every line I go down, I subtract off 2 spaces. And I start with 11. So that at line 1, I subtract off 2 from 11 to get 9. Then, see, here, when L is 2, when the line number is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 11 minus 4 is 7. When the line number is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 11 minus 6 is 5. Okay, so 11 minus 2i spaces. So then this would be S dot substring, and same trick, 0 to 11 minus 2 times I. Okay, because we know that's how we get 11 minus 2i number of spaces. Okay, let's see. I think we're ready to try it. Let's give it a try. Okay, and see, what did I goof up? See, I always forget semicolons. Okay, it compiled. Let me just go to the end. Okay, there's the output. It worked. Okay. All right. So now you'll notice that takes a while. That's 15 minutes of thinking, of building up, from building up the idea of, well, I need a while loop. The while loop's going to do some stuff, and then it increments its counter. Then you go back up. I need to know how many times my while loop's going to loop. So I need to create a counter, decide how many times it's going to be counted, make sure I increment. That's one part. Then I go, okay, this is going to print out one line. The while loop does line, 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 line. Then I look at my picture and go, well, line has 1, 2. The line has one part, a second part, a third part, a fourth part. Okay, and then you're at the end of the line. We don't need to worry about what comes after these stars here. So I think in terms of each line's got first part, second part, third part, fourth part, and the line. So that's here. First part, second part, third part, fourth part, and the line. So sketch it out. Okay, that means I need 5 print statements. then start thinking about what goes in them. You know, certainly the easy part is the second part is always just star. The second part is just always star. See, see, it was one space, a star, two spaces, a star, three spaces, a star. Okay, so the second part is just star. And same for the fourth part, it's just star. Then the hard part. How do you get the right number of spaces there? How do you get the right number of spaces there? You go to the table, and this is the part that's the hardest. Find a formula for that column based on the row number. So how can you find the right number to put in here using this as your input to the formula? So you have to find a formula that tells you how many spaces for each row. And that'll be a formula in terms of I. Now we wrote it over here. I minus 1 spaces for the first part, 11 minus 2i spaces for the second part. That's the trickiest part. Getting that formula, getting those formulas for for these columns here. And you can see this was going up by 1s, this was going down by 2s. You know, things you wouldn't be able to just write this code. I really want to emphasize that it's not that we think anybody would sit down and write this code from top to bottom. Nobody's going to do that. This code gets written in a very roundabout way by everybody. Write a little bit up here, a little bit down here. You kind of work towards the middle, try to get things figured out. You know, so it's always a matter of write a little bit, think about it, try to run it, fix things, think a little bit more, write a little bit more. Try to find a visual aid. Like these tables, for these kinds of problems, a table works real well. Okay, pictures, programmers draw pictures all the time. Lots of our code is written with a picture in mind. We draw a picture on a piece of scrap paper, or we draw a picture from a book or something. Lots of code needs people use visual aids to help them write code all the time. So for me, this table is the thing that would help me figure out how to finish that kind of a problem. Okay, so it's the table that lets me figure that out. Okay. What about another one? Was there another one from here that anybody want to ask about? Let's go back to last week. We were doing examples with methods, and we didn't finish one example. Okay, so here's today. Here's what we did last week. We were doing these. We were talking about methods with output. See, remember we talked about like a formula is a simple example of something with an output. Okay, it's not the only kind of method that has an output when you're just writing a function. When you're writing a method that implements a formula, that's not the only way a method can have an output, but it's a simple way. So Java methods that mimic math formulas. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. Now let me show you something you have to be real careful about. Okay, so here's an example. I'm going to write a method that's going to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So it's a real, you'll see this trick all the time in programming. When you see a 2 in the name of something, that means it's converting from one thing to the other thing. So people use this abbreviation a lot. So this is how I would say Fahrenheit to Celsius. So I take in a number that's a Fahrenheit number, and I return a number that's the equivalent Celsius. And it's a formula. So there's the formula that does it. So you can look that formula up. Okay. Now here's the thing. This method returns an answer. Then I wrote it another way that's bad. This is Fahrenheit to Celsius, the bad way. It takes in a number and it doesn't return anything. What it does is it prints the number that it computes. You should almost never write methods that do this, that print an answer. It's almost never what you want in a program. That's something that would print an answer. Printing is almost always done by special parts of a program. If a program needs to print an answer, it wouldn't be the job of a method to print the answer. It'd be the job of something else to print the answer. So, but a lot of students get this mixed up. Okay, so this thing takes in a Fahrenheit number and it prints the Celsius number. And if you just run it, it seems fine. You see the you see the conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius, or from Fahrenheit to Celsius. But let me show you like why this is a bad way to do things. Okay, I'm going to make a table. Okay, now let me comment out the bad part for now. Let me just do the good part. I want to make a table of temperature conversions. Okay, I'll just go to the end. Okay, there's my table of temperature conversions. So 0 degrees Fahrenheit is negative 17.7777 degrees Celsius. 1 degree Fahrenheit is negative, okay? So you can see the table. I'm not printing the table nicely. I'm just printing out the, Java gives me all these decimal places. So I get all those decimal places, so I'm going ahead and printing them. Notice that 5 degrees Fahrenheit is exactly negative 15 degrees Celsius. So I don't get lots of decimal places there because it's exactly negative 15 degrees. And 14 degrees Fahrenheit is exactly negative 10 degrees Celsius. So I don't get a lot of decimal places there. Okay, now how did that program work? T, now that'll cause the number to be converted to a string and get appended to the string degrees F is. Then I plug T into the formula that does the conversion, and I get back, see, that returns the number that's the Celsius degrees. And it gets converted to a string between that string and that string. So here I'm saying the input is T and the output is F2C of T. And that's real easy to write. T plus degrees F is that temperature Celsius. Okay? So I'm really making use of the fact that when I plug a number in here, I get back out a number. Okay, now let me build the table the other way. Let me build the table the wrong way. And it doesn't, and I'll show you that besides building a table, there's another way that let me show you another way that this would be wrong. But now if I run this, I'll get the exact same table out, but I'll show you why it's not a good way to do it. See, looks like the exact same table. But this table's kind of awkward because here's what it does. Each output line of the table has to be printed as 3 different pieces. You have to print the first part of the table of a row. Then this function, when you call it, it doesn't give you back a number, it fills in the middle part of the row. Then this completes the row. Notice that this is a print and this is a print. So they're on the same line, and this is print line, so it completes the row. But notice how I don't have that this is the input and this is the output. This is a string, and it has to be printed by its, notice that this doesn't really read well. I'm printing something, then I'm calling this method, and then I have to realize, well, yeah, that method is also printing something, but I don't know, that's not obvious. And then I print something else. Compare that to here where I just said print the number, this message, the output number, this message. See, the output number just goes right in there. But see, that's an output number that gets converted to a string. Here, this is its own string, and it has to be, it's going to sit between this output and that output. Okay? Now, I cannot add this to here. Like, watch. Suppose I said, oh, why don't you just add that over here? See, I could just add it here. Why can't I just add it here? Won't compile. The subtlety is, why won't this compile? What is going wrong there? The answer is down here. What goes wrong on line 15 when I get to that plus?
It doesn't return anything.
So what is on the right-hand side of that plus?
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing there. See, this function doesn't return anything. Void, it would have been nicer if this was actually the word nothing, because the function is returning nothing. So there is nothing on the right-hand side of that plus symbol. Whereas what's on the right-hand side of this plus symbol?
A double.
A double, a number. And that number gets converted to a string for us automatically. We don't have to do it. But there is something on the right-hand side of that plus. It's the double returned by that. It's that double. So I can't even write this kind of nice thing where I say this plus this plus this plus that. When I do it the wrong way, I can't use the plus symbol here. I have to do it this awkward way of print the first part of the line, print the second part of the line, which isn't even obvious that I'm printing something because I'm calling this method, but inside that method is a print. And then I print the third part of the line. Okay. So this is really awkward. Now let me show you another way that this bad one is bad. Okay, I'm going to just write a formula here. Double x equal Fahrenheit to Celsius of 17 plus Fahrenheit to Celsius of 22. Now, all I'm doing is I'm calling this function and getting a double, and calling this function and getting a double, and adding the results. Okay, and that'll work. If I want to, I can see that I'll get some number in x. I did too much output. When I try to do both tables, I get too much output. If I try to print both tables, there's too much output. So let me eliminate one of the tables, because the Java visualizer just won't let me do that many steps. So if I eliminate one of the tables, I think I'll be okay. Go to the end. Okay. See, there's that x. Oh, it turned out to be negative 13.88888889. Okay. So that number, whatever that returned, was added to whatever that returned. Okay. Now suppose I try to do that with the other function. So let me do this. What's going to go wrong?
Nothing returns.
Pardon me?
Nothing returns.
Yeah, so what's the addition operator see on his left?
Nothing.
Nothing. So there isn't anything there. There's not. Now what this does is it prints something out, but that doesn't help the plus addition. The plus thing doesn't see that number is printed out. See, this is really, now you can kind of see where this is really a bad idea. This guy didn't return something to plus. He printed his answer. He said, oh, I know the right answer. And he just wrote the answer on the board, but that's not what you wanted here. You want the answer to be returned to plus so it can use it. You want this guy's answer to go to plus. Here, this guy's answer went to the screen window, but it actually didn't even compile. So this isn't even going to compile. If I try to, Java won't compile this because it notices that this doesn't make sense. See, Java says void not allowed here. Now, where's here? Again, bad error messages. Where is here in that error message? Void type not allowed here. And then it gave you line 21. Where do you think here is?
Is it in the main method?
No. It's somewhere on line 21. A void type is not allowed. Now, we know the problem is plus didn't get any answers. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Because both those methods sent their output to the console window. So there's nothing there or there. And plus can't read the console window. So the error message says void type not allowed here. And then it shows you line 21. What specifically is here?
Would it be the plus sign?
Yes, yeah. Plus sign doesn't allow a void on its left or its right. So the here was the plus sign. The plus sign doesn't allow void on the left and doesn't allow void on the right. So here was plus sign. He didn't like voids. Let me show you another example. Here's a funny example. I can do this. What does that formula do? Takes number 22 and does what to it?
Converted to Celsius.
Yeah, and here's the answer. What happens to that answer?
Converted to Celsius again.
Yeah, you just convert. It already is, but just just for the heck of it, I plug it back into this formula. It's like squaring. I do an operation once and I do it again. So I take the number 22, I convert it to another number that represents its Celsius temperature, but then I treat it as if it was a Fahrenheit number and I just put it back in. Now, this is not a useful thing to do, but it works. That'll compile, okay? I'll get some number. I could calculate it with a calculator if I wanted to, about negative 21. Okay, so I get that number. What if you tried to do that with this guy? This is also going to blow up on us. Okay, now watch the error message. Void type not allowed here. Line 22. But what's here now? Where is the here?
The parentheses.
Yeah, it's this set of parentheses there. It's that set of parentheses. You can't have a void inside those parentheses. So the here was inside this outer pair of parentheses. See, this is void. There's nothing there. So you're calling this function not with a double, you're calling this function with nothing. See, so this function sees nothing here, and the compiler complains that says void not allowed here. So the here now was this guy, this inside these parentheses. Okay? This is a real common mistake to make. When somebody asks you to write a method, to return a result, it's real easy to think that you should print the answer. And especially when you're just doing like homework problems, when you're writing methods and you don't do anything with them, you don't even notice that this might be a big mistake, that you're printing the answer, not returning the answer. And I see this mistake when students when they write methods where they don't have to use them, like on a test or in a homework where they're said, write a method that converts from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So there's the formula for converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius, and students will print it. And so they'll have the right formula, but it's not a valid method because it doesn't return the answer, it prints the answer. But if you don't try to use it, you don't realize that that's the wrong thing to do. So whenever you're told to write a method that returns something, make sure you return it as a value. Don't print it as a message. You should almost never have methods printing messages in the real world. We do a lot of that for homework assignments here. See, we write lots of things to print out to print these pretty pictures. But when you start writing programs, especially now we're starting to do a little bit more interesting programming. We're going to start to do things a little bit more tricky. It's almost never going to be the case that a method wants to print something. The method will always want to return something, and it'll return an answer. Okay, and that's going to be a real crucial idea. And I warn you to kind of keep that in mind. If you're asked on the exam or in a homework to write a method that returns something, try to catch yourself from not doing the right answer, but printing it. Yeah, be careful not to do the right answer, but print it, because that's the wrong thing to do with the right answer. You want to have your right answer, and you want to return it. Okay, and then that's what we mean. And then you have to have the type here for returning that kind of answer. Notice that when it does this, it just prints void. Now there's also the following. I could do the following. What have I done now? Oh, I'm sorry. It's still bad, but it's less bad. Okay, this guy's still bad, but he's less bad. Why is he less bad?
Because it returns a value.
Yeah, unlike it does, but he's still bad because he's doing something he really shouldn't be doing, which is printing out an answer. Now that might be useful for debugging, but that's the only reason you might do this is to help you debug your program so you could see the output. But this would usually not be considered a good idea. He is returning the answer, that's good, but he's also printing stuff out, which might be garbling the output screen, for example. If every time you called this function to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, well, actually, watch what happens when you try to make the table out of this. Okay, now watch, if I try to make the table out of that guy, eliminate, okay, there's the first table. Okay, now I'm going to print a table, and I'm using the one that's sort of good and bad. Okay, now the table looks okay, but that's because I printed the table as if it was a bad function. But what I really can do now, since it's actually kind of fixed, is I can go and add that. And I can go ahead and add it here. See, now I can do like I did in the first one. T plus degrees is Fahrenheit to Celsius bad plus degrees T. Okay, so this thing returns an answer, so I can print it. So I can convert it to string. But let me see what's going to go wrong here. This will compile. Watch, it'll compile. Right, see, compile. What's going to go wrong? What's going to go wrong when it hits here? There's what the method does. What's this going to do bad?
Printing out twice.
Yes, it prints it out twice because you, first of all, when you call this method, it prints something out. Then it returns the answer, and then the answer is returned to here and printed a second time. So now we're in really goofed up. Now look at the output when we go to the end. Our table is, I forgot the ln. Oh, I forgot the ln here. Okay, now go to the end. Where is it? What happened? I should have got two outputs. Huh, where did the other output go? That's funny. Let's see, read this real carefully. We're out of time though. T is, okay, we're calling the bad one. We call the bad one and it, oh, the order's mixed up. See this number here? It's at the beginning of the line. See, it's got printed once at the beginning, then the rest of the line got printed. So what happened, see how messed up this is? This guy showed up at the beginning of the line because this was printed while this function was being called here. So you had to call this function first. Then when it called this function printed its output at the beginning of the line. Then this function returned, then it started building this line, and then it printed that line out there. And there's the second output there. See, it's confusing as crazy. It's really crazy confusing. This is why the bad function is such a bad idea of mixing a return value with a printout. Mixing the printout with the return value is a very bad idea because then it made this thing work horribly. This thing printed itself out at the beginning of the line and then printed itself out in the middle of the line. Okay, yeah, it's very bad idea to mix printing with returns. It almost never ends up working right. Okay, so we're running out of time, but that's why I wanted to show you this idea that be real careful to distinguish between returns and prints. Okay, so be real careful about that. Be careful, go back to the original version we had it. That prints, that returns, that's the good way, that's the bad way. And mixing them up is just as bad. If you mix them, it's almost as bad as this is. So it's not a good idea to compromise and somehow have both a return value and a printout. Doesn't work either. Okay, so we'll quit there. If you have questions about the review problems or if you have questions about anything else, please send me an email or come to office hours. And remember, we'll do more. We can do more practice problems on Thursday. And so if you have questions about some of the other practice problems, we can do some more on Thursday. And then otherwise, we'll start talking about arrays a little bit. And then the exam will be when class, the exam will be available as soon as class is over. Anybody got any last minute question? Anybody got any last minute thing? Okay, so if you haven't voted, go vote if there's still time. I think there's still time. Okay, and see you on Wednesday. And like I say, if you have questions, send me an email or come to office hours tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to end the class now. Okay, see you on Thursday. Goodbye.